One's seemingly forcefully. The idea is aware of that and do something to make sure the bread's not upset or embarrassed. But obviously we know the bread does have guilt. Better than
The elder of the judges says each one is not going to tell them what the and he didn't know, right? He didn't know about.
Type of Bechira means she chose desires? What? Type of Bechira means she chose her desires?
Where? What?
Type of Bechira.
Where do you see that?
You just read it. Her daughter.
Tavo, and she came from Bechira, the older brother. Bechira is like from before.
I read it as type of Bechira that she chose her desires. Where are you running to?
Hello, good evening everyone. Thank you for joining us at Partners in Torah. Thank you to all the new people that came and those that have returned week after week. We really appreciate it, and tonight especially, all your learning for tonight has been dedicated for the full recovery and full and speedy recovery of Chana Dina Matel Bas Tzivia Yehudis, who is unfortunately not doing very well, and she is, however, doing better and making progress, and we are just davening, praying for her full refuah, her recovery, and thank you everyone for learning to help her recover faster, and hopefully she'll get home soon. And thank you to Benny and Tivia Weiss for sponsoring tonight's meal, beautiful meal, delicious meal from Dino's next door. So thank you also, Dino's, for preparing that. And round of applause. And tonight we have a very special speaker. He is Rabbi Cohen's partner, Chavrusa, that I would say almost never misses a night of Partners in Torah unless Rabbi Cohen doesn't come. And we are very honored to have him speak tonight. So, Dr. Cherem.
Thanks. Everybody can hear me, right? All right. Well, when Rabbi Wolmi asked me to do this today, I knew that I had to give him a free consultation somewhere down the line, because something must have been screwed up there, not correctly, because asking me, who am I to give this talk? But I have been here since the beginning, and with Rabbi Cohen and his guidance, we started on Parashat Balak, in the translated book of the Zohar, which is what we both like to study. It has 400 pages, and since the beginning, we have only covered 100. So this is an amazingly slow process. The Parasha Vayera, which is what Rabbi Wolmi asked me to talk about, is an entire book. So by the time we get to that, it's going to be very difficult. Yet this portion is deeply layered with meaning and offering us numerous lessons and providing a great deal of light for our lives. So a single verse could be analyzed and studied, and I'm sure that when we, Baruch Hashem, get to that, it's probably going to take us 2 years to get through the parasha. So trying to give you sort of a brief pearl about this parasha is very difficult when there's so many things happening in this parasha. I'm such a bad speaker that I have to make my own notes, so forgive me if I'm looking down. I decided to concentrate and talk to you about it mostly from the Kabbalistic point of view in this parasha. And I didn't extract from the big examples, not Akedat Yitzhak, not all the things that are happening here. I'm going to concentrate on just 3 dots, 3 single dots that are located in this parasha. And there are 10 places in the entire Torah where there are dots. So these are very important places that allows us a certain thought or purpose for why these dots are there. The last ones that we read or noticed, they were in Nitzavim. There were 11 such dots, and that was the 10th set of dots in the entire Torah. And those dots on Nitzavim, just to remind us, it connected us to Yom Kippur, the 10th day of judgment, which is also a way to connect with Binah, the highest level of energy that we can get throughout the year. Now, in this parasha, we connect also to the power of 3 dots. And it is, by the way, the only portion that has another set, which is just composed by 1 dot, also in the letter Vav, in another word. In these 3 dots are on top of the letters Aleph, Yud, and Vav. In the sentence, Elav Hayeh Sarah, which means, and he said to him, where is Sarah? There is a connection between Aleph, Yud, Vav, and Aleph, Yud, He, from Hayeh. Or between our world of Malchut, which is Aleph, Yud, He, and the upper world, Aleph, Yud, Vav. Our world can be like the upper world only if we make ourselves smaller. So the purpose of these 3 dots, and hopefully when we listen to the parasha, the complete parasha on the reading on Saturday, as we pass through these words, we're going to take a moment to concentrate on trying to make ourselves shrink our ego, shrink our desire to receive for the self alone. Why is this so important? These dots, therefore, will make us think of how little we are. This is important because of another statement that says, open for me an opening the size of the head of a needle, and I will give you the upper world. Is there any way that we can really understand this concept? I'm going to tell you a little story so that we can understand this and then go to the punchline. Once Rabbi Susha and his brother Rabbi Elimelech were discussing, and one said that the most important thing for a person to know is how low he is, and from this will come an understanding of the greatness of the Creator. The other one said the exact opposite. A person should look first at the greatness of the Creator, and then realize and understanding how little he really is. Not being able to come to a conclusion on this debate, they took it to somebody else, Rabbi Dov, who said that they were both true. But the person who thinks of himself as low before the Creator is at a higher level. And this is kind of a little bit connects with the statement that I said that Hashem said, give me the opportunity of the size of a head of a pin, and I will show you the upper world. Now let's get to an example that we can actually understand. Let's assume that you are seeing a work of art for the first time in a museum, in somebody's home, Rabbi Wolbe's house. You see this incredible work of art, and you like it, you're at awe with it. What's the next thing you do? Where you get it?
How much it costs? Who's the artist?
Who's the artist? Exactly. We probably want to know, wow, who did this? Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to help me. Let's shrink ourselves to the essence of what life is. Let's get all the way down to our DNA. I don't want to get very technical with medical aspects about DNA, but we have to understand this a little bit. The DNA. We have found a lot of great things about the DNA and the so-called the sequencing of the DNA, the Human Genome Project. There was a budget of about $2 billion and 15 years to conclude. They managed to do it in 13 years and way below their previous budget. Now, it's very important to understand the DNA. Francis Collins, who was the chairman of the project, eventually wrote his book. And he said that these 4 letters, these ribonucleic acids, the A, the adenosine, the adenine, which always meets with thymine, and guanine, which meets with cytosine in this double helix thing. So you only need to know half of it, because if there is an A, there is a T on the other side. And we call these 4 bases. The human DNA consists of 3.3 billion repetitions of these bases. So here is miracle number 1. How do you put 3.3 billion of whatever into every nucleus of every cell in the body? That's awesome, right? If you don't understand anything more, that to me is a miracle right there. And not to think that our DNA is special. Every human, every living thing has a DNA. Even the size of the DNA of an onion, which you chop and add it to the stew or whatever, is just as long as the human DNA. Now, the purpose of these bases, which repeat themselves, is to create, and there is certain genes. Genes are the areas where this creates the expression of something. Some molecule is going to be created, is going to give the particular color to the eyes, or whatever those genes do. And by the way, 99% of the human DNA is exactly the same in every human. So only 1% difference constitutes enough that every individual is different in the face of the earth. Now, these four letters, Collins called it the language of God. Well, that may be so, but I think he missed by a lot, because the language of God comes in 22 letters, not just 4. But just with these 4, we can create enough permutations that anything essentially happens in the body. Initially, we thought there would be something like 150,000 genes. Now, by sequencing the DNA, we know that that number is closer to 19 to 20,000 genes. That's it. Now, these genes then are surrounded by the rest of the 3.3 billion repetitions. I mean, one gene could be 10,000 repetitions or a million if you want, but there's still 3.3 billion of these repetitions. And with only 20,000 genes, then we call the rest of the stuff, when we didn't know what it was, we just called it junk DNA. Now we know there's no such thing as junk. I mean, this is a work of art. But is there any way to prove who wrote this work of art? It so happens that a scientist from Israel, actually from the Technion, discovered that between the particular genes or the conglomerates that create the signaling, there is for 10 spaces or 10 conglomerates of other information. And then there is a particular set of genes. And then there is 5 spaces. And then there is, again, other genes and information that is necessary. Then there is 6 spaces, and so on, more expression of genes. And then there is 5 spaces. And then this sequence repeats itself throughout the entire DNA. And that's the punchline. Does anybody understand the significance of these spaces?
Say, repeat the numbers again. How much? 4?
10,
10,
10?
5, 6, 5.
10 for youth.
Wow.
Hey, Vav, K.
Wow.
This work of art is sign for all of those who think we're believers here. We would say, well, of course God did all of this. Here is the proof.
Wow.
We have shrunk ourselves right now with this awesome revelation, so to speak, to the size of a point of a needle. Who doesn't feel that that gives you a little inkling of the upper world?
Awesome.